This week on The Week Ahead, will MCO be prolonged? Investor rush, what's happening at the capital markets? As well as the long-awaited Joe Biden inauguration to be sworn in as the 46th President of America. My name is Ibrahim Sani and I have with me...
I am Hafiz Mazuki.
And we are both broadcasting from home. And of course, a little tidbit here, there has to be something that needs to be said. There were some positive cases out of our main studio in Bursa, Malaysia. And because of that, we are now moving strictly from the work from home situation. But that doesn't take away our story of the day, which is, of course, the MCO. Last week, we discussed on a possibility of an MCO being introduced. And we got more than what we bargained for, because it seems like the Prime Minister has also introduced a darurat or an emergency order.
And this is basically came out of the blue, because as we all know, we the people, as in the rakyat, were already half expecting about the MCO being called in for certain states, especially the red states, the red zone states such as Selangor, Penang, Johor, etc., etc. But the emergency proclamation came out as a bit of a surprise. But nevertheless, it highlights the extent of the seriousness of the pandemic that is weighing down on us. So, Ibrahim, what do you think about the current MCO or the MCO 2.0? Is it going to be extended?
Yeah, of course, it's going to be extended. I mean, no doubt about it, because we have a speech by the Director General of Health, Tan Sri Nur Hisham. We'll play the clip right now.
Tersebut kita harap kita dapat menurunkan, iaitu melengkokkan graf semula, iaitu jangkaan kita ialah mungkin dalam tempoh 12 minggu kita akan lihat, tetapi kita akan melaksanakan 2 minggu dulu, yang kita akan lihat perkembangan 2 minggu, dan kalau perlu atau tidak kita bergantung pada data-data, dan jangkaan kita mungkin dalam bulan 5 kita mungkin boleh melandaikan kes-kes atau COVID-19 dalam negara kita.
So as you can see, the clip just now was talking about the dire need of an MCO situation right now. And of course, the DG was saying that we need at least 4 weeks to flatten the curve. And depending on which sources that you guys are getting, some say that by May, everything's going to be subsided. Some say that the DG was quoted wrongly. He was talking about bringing the case down to 500 cases per day by May or by April. Whatever it is, 2 weeks is not going to cut it. And of course, with the recent announcements of positive cases from the Member of Parliaments, including that in the executive branch, we're talking about the Deputy Minister of Communications, we're talking about the Minister of in charge of Economic Affairs, Tok Pa, we're talking about the
Home Minister.
The Home Minister, as well as the Rina Harun, the
Women's Minister and Community Development Minister. That was
exactly. And you know, other MPs like Gua Musang MP, Tengku Razali, and all the others. So if you can see this hitting the executive and some parts of the legislative members, i.e. the MPs, and we're seeing 3,000 average daily cases coming in as per norm, we're not going to look at 2 weeks being readily available. Because of this, there is also a recent report coming in from Gallen Center or Blue Code, which quoted the head of infectious diseases at Hospital Sungai Buloh, which is the primary hospital for COVID-19 in Malaysia. Dr. Suresh was talking about Tier 4 and Tier 5 patients being overloaded. In fact, Sungai Buloh is delaying the admission of cases for Tier 4 and Tier 5, meaning these cases need intubation and ICU. Because there simply isn't enough beds at Sungai Buloh. So the MCO is quite literally overdue, and because of it being overdue, we need a lot more time in order for us to control or contain the growth rate. My question to you, Hafiz, is why did the Prime Minister introduce 2 weeks when we know for a fact that we need more or longer than that? What's the story there?
I think it's a bit about easing people into the MCO, because it's been a while. I think the last time we had a full, I call it the MCO full, and the CMCO and everything else is more like MCO light. The MCO full, it grates on a lot of people. It puts a burden because a lot of things have to be closed down. A lot of businesses have to suffer. So it's very taxing mentally to the people. And I think that is why the introduction, I mean, it goes into the same pattern, right? 2 weeks, and then we're going to reassess, putting in the hopes, no matter how much little, that, okay, it may end after 2 weeks. But however, I think we have to take heed of what DG Hisham said. In fact, I think in one of his in one of the reports, he was quoted as saying that this time, this MCO 2.0 is going to be a month or 4 weeks tops, because businesses are bleeding. But when you talk about businesses are bleeding and striking a fine balance between economy and health, I mean, which one would win? Yeah, Ibrahim?
Well, there is a clear study by the WEF, or World Economic Forum, that says that if a country manages to contain the pandemic well, or in this sense, the epidemic within the country, their economy is going to grow as well. It is a direct correlation between public health and economic prosperity. And because
it's never a if. I mean, if you take the economy is going to grow as well.
Participants of the economy is the people. Robots are not participating in the economy. People like you and me are. And because of us being sick, or is at the risk of being sick, how on earth are we going to remain productive? Remember, you and I are both in the knowledge sector, and we can still do our work via Skype. But think of our colleagues. Yeah, I mean, the very colleagues that are recording this interview, right? They have to be at the studio right now as we speak. They have to work from the office. And while we both are in the, in the media sector and in the knowledge sector, some of us within the sector, like our technicians running this particular program right now, they can't work from home. They have to work from the office. And let's do each other a favor. If we can work from home, people like you and me can work from home, we should. And if we can't, we must try, because there are others in this sector that can't, people like the engineers of AWANI right now. And if you think about the service delivery providers, anywhere from bus drivers to train drivers or train engineers to pilots flying in the sky, they have to be out there working. And because of us being there with them, increases the risk of them getting risky. Therefore, there is a straight correlation between public healthcare and economic prosperity. Now, using the same formula, Hafiz, that's why the economy of the country is now in dire straits. Second quarter last year, we saw a dip of negative 17% GDP growth. But third quarter and second quarter, we saw a hike. But doesn't mean that that's going to solve the entire 2020 GDP problems. Now, the week ahead, we'll probably see, if any, an indication of Bank Negara as well as the DOSM, or Department of Statistics, announcing 2020 GDP. I don't think it's going to be next week. It might be towards the end of January, but it will flag a very disappointing growth figure for 2020. Now, we've started off this year on a very wrong foot. We started off this year by postponing the economic growth of the country, but trust me on this, this is the medicine that we need. We need to contain the pandemic in order for us to have a strong continued economic growth for the rest of the year.
That is absolutely true, Ibrahim. My hopes is that everyone, to all those who are watching, just hang in there, make sure that, the MCO is here to stay. And even if the MCO is lifted, you have to be wary about how you go on with your life. There's no such thing as a new normal. In fact, it has become, this new pandemic normal has already become a norm, and we have to learn to live with it. Ibrahim.
Also, okay, we'll go for a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about investors and why they are running away or staying put. Up next, after these messages. Welcome back to the week ahead. We shall give a slight focus to some sentiments in the market right now. There is a recent report by CGS CIMB talking about the different behaviors by retail investors and institutional investors that was seen in the first 2 weeks of this year. Retail investors, according to CGS CIMB, is continuing to buy stocks and of course participating in the capital markets. And some of the interest that is given by the retail investors are only in two sectors, i.e. the rubber glove sector / healthcare sector and the financial services sector. Now, for the financial services sector, it's quite easy for us to understand. It's a stable, very low risk kind of investment to go into. If you think about the financial services sector, companies like Maybank, like Public Bank, they're going to be posting some strong and healthy profits despite the bank moratorium being introduced late last year because of the MCO. But because of the trend that they've shown over the past few years, in fact decades, it's a pretty stable industry to bet on and to invest on. But the healthcare sector is a bit more problematic. Again, the same research house, CGS-CIMB, says that some glove makers, like for instance Top Glove, is underweight. That means you got to be thinking seriously about where you want to put your money inside companies like Top Glove. But at the same time, CGS-CIMB argues that it is still undervalued. So if you want to think about investing in some healthcare stocks and glove maker stocks, you really have to think about the volatility that these kind of industries, these companies in this industry is going to present. Top Glove went up to 12 ringgit at one point. Now it's hovering around 6-7 ringgit. Of course, earlier last year it was at 1 or 2 ringgit. So that is the kind of range that you got to work with. But that's not the case right now when it comes to institutional investors, because according to the research by CGS-CIMB, institutional investors are shying away from the market. In fact, a lot of them are selling off. There's a reason for this. Institutional bodies like EPF and of course PNB might want to think about restructuring their investment portfolio. They might want to think about the kind of returns that they can give out to their dividend holders as well as account holders and members, EPF members, people like you and me, Hafiz. But at the same time, they got to think about what's next for them to invest in for this year, which brings to mind how institutional investors in this country might invest for 2021. We're looking at, for the week ahead, they might invest in overseas market. While this is good for their investment portfolio, this is bad for local companies because you're losing investments from institutional money. Now, that's just in terms of the domestic investors. For the international investors, however, CGS-CIMB is echoing the rest of the consensus of the research houses in the country. They're not coming into Malaysia. Why do you think this?
Yeah, and when you talk about that, yeah, Ibrahim, is it because of the MCO coupled with the emergency proclamation? I mean, what's going on? I mean, like at this particular time, it is important for us to keep on boosting our investor confidence. So, what is happening in your view?
I think the political risk of the country is becoming untenable. Very recently, I interviewed the most promising company in the country, which is Aerodyne Group. Aerodyne, of course, currently is a drone manufacturer and drone delivery expert, but they are building a lot of technology and a lot of capacity in AI, AR, VR. And their client base is actually quite impressive. Very recently, they just signed on with DHL. But the story about Aerodyne is that the slither of income, if you think about it as a percentage of a pie, only 20-30% comes from Malaysia. 3/4 of their business, 75% of their business comes from overseas. This is what it takes for you to be a unicorn in Malaysia. You can be based in Malaysia, but because of the rising political risk that exists in the country, and it's going to continue to rise despite the emergency being declared, people, or at least investors, might see it hard to invest in Malaysia. That's at least a part of the story that needs to be told.
But isn't that worrying, Ibrahim? Because if you look at it, I mean, what you're saying to people like me is basically like, if you want to start a business, you can be based in Malaysia, but you got to look elsewhere. And well, what if Malaysian companies start looking elsewhere? Who will start looking at Malaysia?
Exactly, no one. No, that's the answer, right? And that's when the economic growth and prosperity of the country is actually quite crucial. SMEs are going to be the backbone of the country. They have been the backbone of the country. We've seen numbers anywhere from 60% to 95% of the country's businesses being employed by SMEs. They are going to be propping the economy up. They have no other choice but to service people like you and me at home. You're going to be working out of your house in KL. I'm going to be working out of my house in Selangor, in PJ. We are going to rely on the businesses in and around our household, particularly when you look at the PKP or MCO requirements, right? 10-kilometer radius, right?
Yes,
Is
exactly.
the 10 kilometers within me that's going to be propped up by people like me. So I'm thinking really hard about how they are going to fare in MCO 2.0, because just like the MCO 1.0 last year, they were the hardest hit. They had to let go a lot of their staff, and in tandem, their staff can't earn, and they are dipping into their cash savings, including iLestari and EPF and KWSP savings and all that. And of course, we know that the government and of course EPF has imposed a lot of restrictions and terms and conditions before you can tap into your account one of your EPF. But that still doesn't take the story away that you're dipping into your own cash to get money out for yourself. You're not tapping into some other external cash involved.
And it's not your savings, it's actually your retirement fund.
Yeah, I mean, retirement fund and savings, I guess it's the same. But the story here is that there's no extra cash being generated. So it's about how we can think about propping up small businesses and SME businesses during MCO 2.0, because the big businesses and businesses who are small currently but thinking big might not want to think about Malaysia as a destination that they want to go to. But I just want to tap into your mind right now, Hafiz. Do you think that the announcement of the emergency, while it has created a furor online, do you think that this is going to help in a way tone down or calm down the temperature of the situation right now in the country?
I mean, logically speaking, yes, it should. I mean, on paper, that's what it's meant to do, right? It's supposed to stop all talks about all these elections. It's going to stop any talk about parliament being dissolved. It's going to be like, it's going to be clear. Okay, from now until August, at least we should expect no political upheavals, no change in government, nothing, so that we can focus on the task at hand. However, looking at what happened after the emergency proclamation, you hear MPs start from within the Perikatan Nasional Government coming out and saying that they have retracted their support. I don't know whether this is gonna. I mean, this peace is going to last for long, Ibrahim.
Yeah, of course. We can wait and see, but in the week ahead, we're going to expect retail investors continuing to invest more. If you are part of those retail investors that are trying to get into the market and try to invest more, let us know. Use the hashtag AWANI News, hashtag AWANI News, tag either Hafiz or myself or both of us, so that we can track your comments online. We'll go for a short break. When we come back, we'll go to Washington, D.C., which is in a whole case of its own, going through its own political upheaval in its own right. But that's coming up after these messages. Let's talk a little bit more about some international events that are going to take place in the week ahead. Joe Biden is going to be sworn in as the 46th President of the United States. And of course, his inauguration is marred by violence. We've seen how the right-wing extremists and domestic terrorists of Americans have stormed the Capitol, leaving at least 5 people dead. In the meantime, a lot of warnings and issuances of statements of caution has been introduced by members of the security services and the FBI in the US, including that of possible armed insurgents that might take place in all 50 states, 50 capital states in the US. So in turn, the District of Columbia, or DC, has been declared as an emergency, just like Malaysia, and this is because they want to increase the security that can be accorded to for the president-elect. What's your thought on this, Hafiz?
My God, Ibrahim. I mean, this past week, looking at what's happening in the United States, I thought what we were experiencing here in Malaysia was really bad enough, but looking at what happened in the United States is much worse, and you could see the tensions flaring among those who support and those who don't support 45th President Donald Trump, and this highlights the divisive nature of United States to the point that you suddenly look at them and they're no longer the pioneers of democracy and everything. It looks like to me they just look like another the incident that happened looks like what's going to happen in another third world country, and that's worrying,
And of course, I mean,
observers.
some political commentators as well as news anchors have been called out because they were trying to equate what is happening in Washington with countries around the world, and those people from those countries around the world have called them out, saying that don't include us in your own trouble. So
Yes.
that has been quite fascinating. Another thing that is happening right now is, of course, last week, the outgoing president, has been impeached for the second time. Nothing like this has ever happened
in
before.
history, right?
The first in history. I don't even want to mention his name because he is as ridiculous as it is. But the fact that the country is in chaos is kind of an on-brand kind of situation for that guy. It's kind of very much something that you would equate that will happen if that guy became president. And to tie that back to how this will shape Joe Biden's administration is going to be very interesting. Because the reason why we brought this topic up is not just because we want to highlight that Joe Biden is going to be inaugurated as the next president. It's also the fact that Democrats are in control of the White House and both houses of Congress, including that of the Senate and the House of Representatives.
No matter how slim the majority is.
Yes, I mean, they're in control, and jumping ship is not a thing in America, at least not yet, because we don't know what's going to happen there. But what does this mean to people like you and me? What does this mean to countries like Malaysia and the rest of the world? Does it mean, because technically, if one political party controls all three chambers, we're looking at an easier path to legislation, an easier path to administration. But that's, of course, in theory, and has been proven so correct for the past 200 years of the existence of America. But things are very different now. What do you think is going to be different or the same under Joe Biden's administration that's going to take place next week?
I think looking at how Joe Biden acts prior to him being inaugurated, because I think this is the first time that I actually see office of president-elect, a president-elect who is actually giving out his policy ideas, announcing things. It shows the extent of how contrasting Joe Biden is going to take America compared to Donald Trump. And I think the first thing for President-elect Biden is actually he needs to sort out domestic issues first. And we're talking a lot here. We're talking about the vaccination rollout program. We're talking about the whole pandemic management. We're talking about the economy. We're talking about jobs and everything, and borders, immigration, everything. So Joe Biden have to sort that out first, and then we're going to see the effect or the impact of him being the president later on. Maybe we're talking about 6 months or 1 year from now.
Clearly, our own administration, Prime Minister Muhyiddin is going to extend his congratulatory remarks on behalf of the people of Malaysia to America. And we have seen how the relationship between America and Malaysia have deteriorated under the presidency, under the 45th President of America, except for the fact that the ousted Prime Minister of Malaysia did go to the White House to visit the guy. But other than that, we haven't seen any other communique between the two countries. So perhaps now is the time for us to mend the ties between the two countries. Having said that, my question is on how China will react towards the presidency of Joe Biden. Will China resume the kind of relationship that they had with America, or will they now pursue things in a very different way? And there is a very strong sense of a permanence towards how they will view their relationship with America moving forward. Those are the kind of geopolitics that are currently happening in the country right now, and of course the world. But at the same time, what we need to look ahead for the week ahead in the third week of January for this year is on how countries like Malaysia is going to control the pandemic, and how countries like Malaysia and in the UK and some other countries, one or two countries that are seeing a resurgence of cases around the world. We're going to be talking about vaccine a lot in the coming weeks, but for now, those are the kind of thoughts that we can share with you for the week ahead. Hafiz?
Yes, basically you just summed it up all nicely. All nicely. Those are the things, the pertinent issues that we will be looking at for this first month of the year. And in fact, 2021 is showing up to be pretty challenging, as challenging or perhaps even more challenging than 2020. Do stay with us, and please share with us your thoughts about where or what are the issues that we should discuss.
Use hashtag AWANI News, and of course tag either Hafiz or me in the upcoming shows. Until then, thanks very much for watching, and see you in the week ahead.